So first, we sent the request to the Ministry of Transport. We had wanted to find out that particular information, and so first it had to do with uh, the contract, the specific contract that was in issue, because you recall that when the matter came up in Parliament, the Minister for Transport did assure Parliament that it was a document that he was prepared to make available to Parliament. And he actually even indicated that during his vetting, it was one of the requirements was that he makes that document available to Parliament. And he said that he had it with him when he came for the vetting. And so it was information that he could readily provide to Parliament. And so we wanted a contract for that particular agreement in terms of the Ghana Airport Company Limited and the Frontiers Health Services. So that is the first piece of information that we wanted. The second one had to do with a chronology of the processes that led to the selection and award of the contract to Frontiers Health Service. The third being the reasons for the selection and award of the contract specified above. And the next one is the total amount of money generated from COVID-19 testing at the airport from the inception of this agreement with Frontiers to date. And this piece of information we felt the ministry could provide because the Ministry of Transport in June told Parliament that a little over $1 million had been made specifically from the payments that Frontiers had made to the Transport Ministry. And so it meant that the minister again indicated that out of every $150 that was being paid by travelers or persons who were coming into the country, $10 of that amount goes to the Ghana Airport Company Limited. And so we felt that if this is information that or amounts that they are supposed to give to the Ghana Airport Company Limited, it will mean that the Transport Ministry and government and the Airport Company Limited should be in a position to tell us how much, because they should be able to know how much the company has made in total before they will be able to know how much is their portion. So, I mean, you can't just take the money. You need to know how many people have come in, how much you've charged them, and how much we deserve to take as well.
And what's intriguing has got to do with the amount of money involved. We could just bring some of the excerpts of the response we're getting through from the Kotoka International Airport, particularly, I'm referring to the Ghana Airport Company Limited in terms of what management has got to say about the money itself, the amount involved in all of this. So here we go. First one indicating that the agreement between the Ghana Airport Company Limited and Frontiers Health Services contains information, first of all, of a nature which is exempt under Section 10 of the Right to Information Act. We'll get to that shortly, Blay. Then we also know that there's the issue that the Ghana Airports Company Limited is not, first of all, in possession of the chronology of the processes that led to the selection and award of the contract to Frontiers. Understandably so, you were pointing to the fact that the Transport Ministry may have been in charge of that process. So here we are, because when it comes to the money, point 4 is now giving us some clarity as to what the position of the Ghana Airport Company Limited may have been. They're telling us that they are unable to confirm the amount of money derived from the COVID-19 testing because passengers paid directly to Frontiers Healthcare. That's the response we're getting, Blake.
Yes, and that is the explanation. The reason we had asked was in June, the minister said government earns $1.16 million in royalties from the airport's COVID-19 test. That is Kweku for Isiam, and that's what he told Parliament. And he indicated that this is an amount that Frontiers had paid the Ghana Airports Company in total. And so our argument was that the ministry should be able to tell us this particular piece of information. I mean, they should be able to provide that. The ministry then redirected our request to the Ghana Airports Company Limited to say that, they believe that this is information that is in the custody of the Ghana Airports Company, so relating to the contract and the said payment as well. And so we were directed there. And now we are hearing from the airports company that it's an amount that they cannot provide. And our confusion in this particular instance is that, they are supposed to pay you $10 out of the $1K that they were charging. And so how are you determining that $10, your share of the total amount, if you do not know what the total amount is or how many passengers have been coming? And that is information that we believe that should be in the custody of the Ghana Airports Company.
Interesting points there. How do you respond to point 1, for instance, and we could just look at that. Point 1 touching on the issue about Section 10 of the Right to Information Act, Right to Information Act, which obviously Section 10 that they're referring to. Help us understand that. Section 10 has got to do with some exemptions. So if there are exemptions, looking at the category of exemptions that we have under Section 10 of the Right to Information law, which specific part do we suppose that the airport company may be referring to? Because I'm having a hard time pointing to the exact portion they may be coming under in this case.
I mean, our confusion is very similar to the one you're expressing as well. And so we can look at Section 10 broadly, and Section 10 indicates that information is exempt from a disclosure to official publication where A, the information contains trade secrets or financial, commercial, scientific, or technical information that belongs to the state or public institution, and the information has monetary or potential monetary value. I mean, we are not clear in our mind what trade secrets could be contained in this particular instance. It's an agreement between the Ghana Airport Company Limited and Frontiers, allowing Frontiers to undertake testing, COVID-19 testing at the airports. We do not know what form of trade secrets could be in this particular document. The second one says the disclosure of information can reasonably be expected to cause a disruption of business or trade in the country. Again, information that can reasonably be expected to affect the integrity or stability of the financial system. Another one here has to do, information contains criterion, procedure, position, or instruction that relates to negotiations being carried on or being carried by on behalf of state or public institution, the disclosure of which shall be injurious to national security and economic development. And the final one here, information contains questions or methodology to be used in an examination, recruitment, or selection process, and the release is likely to jeopardize the integrity of the examination, recruitment, or selection process. And so, I mean, because they didn't even narrow it down to what specific concern they have under Section 10, for which reason they believe is exempt, it creates a situation where we cannot even understand that. And so, this is a matter that the research team and the JoyNews team decided that we are going under the law to go to the Right to Information Commission, especially because in this particular instance, ordinarily there should be a review process that goes to the head of the entity. But in this particular instance, the response came from the managing director for the Ghana Airport Company Limited, who ordinarily will be the recipient of the review request. And so we are going a step further to go to the RTI Commission to seek their intervention on this particular matter. And we've seen them in other decisions. They have the authority to make a demand for the said information to be provided to them, for them to make a determination on whether this is something that falls within the Section 10. And so that will be the next line that we'll be pursuing on this particular matter.
Joseph Akable with our research desk, giving us the latest on this. Let's bring through some of the anti-graft agencies. Joining us now is Adam Senanu, co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Thank you, sir, for your time. I'm just intrigued by what we're learning from the Ghana Airport Company Limited. Point one, touching on Section 10 of the RTI. It appears that the hopes that this was going to be a piece of legislation that will shine light on government contracts and other dealings of public agencies is not beginning to yield the desired results, you agree? Because many could hide under Section 10 and simply go scot-free. That's happening in the case of the Airport Company Limited. What do you think?
I'm curious. I think that this probably would have been more meaningful if they had specifically indicated which aspect of Section 10 they are appealing to. Is it trade secrets? Is it disruption in business? I mean, a little more specificity would have allowed us to be able to wrap our minds around it and say, okay, this seems to have a logical basis. As it is, it appears that we need to go a step further, and kudos to you. This is part of expanding the frontiers of democracy, that we have institutions and groups that don't give up, but we test the law, we test the processes. So we need to go back and say, what exactly are you talking about? What trade secret could you be talking about when it's testing of Ghanaian citizens? And we know what they were using. It's global knowledge. So Really, really curious, especially when you have the minister able to tell us that 1 million Ghana cedis was made out of it. If it's $10 for every 150, we're supposed to go to then say that, therefore multiply it by, 15 or 150 to get the exact amount. It's really strange. And these are the kind of things that begin to make people very suspicious of what may have transpired.
But then, to be fair to the Ghana Airport Company Limited, they have a supervising agency. Well, it may be a quasi-state institution, yet it will definitely come under the Transport Ministry. We've heard from the sector minister provide some, not necessarily clarity, but some sort of answers to some of these issues surrounding the award of the contract. It appears that the fault may be from above, quote unquote.
It wouldn't be too surprising. I don't know whether you should use the word fault. Perhaps you want to say the influence on the, the powers that be are influencing the response from GACL. But GACL has a lot of professionals, top-notch professionals. So that's why I said this response is a very curious one. It's probably a way of biding time and keeping neutral and not getting into any head-on collision with the politicians at the top somewhere. So, Mr. Kable and co, please proceed to go back to the commission and say they should investigate and establish whether this truly can come under Section 10. I'll be extremely surprised if eventually we are told that it does come under, because I see no trade secrets here. And I can't see how any business can be disrupted. They've been making their money and taking it away. Already we feel offended that it's only $10 out of 150, they are taking. It looks like a huge ripoff. But we would like to encourage you to go a step further. It's all part of expanding democracy. So let's not give up. I would not say that this immediately is a weakness of the RTI. Perhaps there are lessons to be learned to strengthen the kind of responses that institutions are to give to applicants for information. So that if you say under Section 10, and we know under Section 10 we have a number of things enumerated, one has to be specific as to which aspect of Section 10, so that then there is clarity on what exactly the communication is suggesting.
Okay, but there is also an outstanding issue about the inconsistency as to who we can hold accountable in all of this. I recall the explanation from the Health Minister, Kweku Agyeman-Menu, who once told Parliament and a Parliamentary Select Committee that, well, when it comes to that contract, we need to move to the Office of the President on that. In some cases, we're being redirected to the Transport Ministry. I mean, this whole disjointed form of answers we're receiving on this raises a number of questions as to issues relating to procurement, because categorically, and if we could just go back to what it is that the airport company is telling us at point 3, I believe, at point 3 there, for instance, telling us that even the processes leading to the award of the contract cannot be accounted for by the airport company. And I just want to quote them right. It's at point 2, actually. They're saying that GACL is not in possession of the chronology of the processes that led to the selection and award to Frontiers Health Services to provide the COVID-19 testing at the airport. So this is a public entity, a state corporation, that is not in charge of its procurement processes. It raises a lot of questions, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, so I was going to ask if Joseph was still around. Whose signature do we have on that contract? And the letterhead is it GACL or is it the Ministry of Transport? If it is signed off by GACL, then they ordinarily ought to be providing the answers. If it's signed off by GACL and they are suggesting that they were not engaged through the processes and yet they did the final signing, it tells us that there is a problem with our procurement process, because you can't have an entity signing off at the end and they are not part of the process such that they are saying this is a service we want or this is a product we want, these are the stakes, and yet they have to sign off. I mean, it will suggest that people can take advantage of our institutions of state just to finalize contracts on deals that they have already negotiated. And that is very risky. It would mean that's a red flag. And so, yes, you are highlighting something that is extremely important. If GACL eventually signed off, and yet they are saying that they had no hand in the processes leading to that signing off, that's a serious issue that we ought to interrogate some more. So I don't know whether he's around. It would be good to look at that contract and see who signed off on it. And that can then be put into the context of these comments they are making and conclusions drawn.
And then readily, the directives from the Speaker of Parliament comes to mind. The fact that he's asked the Select Committee on Finance and Health to take a look at matters relating to COVID-19 expenditure. I recall that your citizens' movement against corruption backed such a move and a directive from the Speaker. He's giving a deadline on this. Would you want this matter to feature prominently?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, the I don't know what to call it, rigmarole of sending people around. You go to Ministry of Transport, they say GACL. GACL responds and says, we have no hand in the processes, which means go back to Transport or go back to RT Commission. It's unacceptable because all of us have an interest in ensuring that the resources of this nation are applied appropriately, that we can promote the progress of citizens. So if there's an entity providing a service and Ghanaians have paid money, good money, and we can't tell what proportion of that came in, we say there's a trade secret on a testing whose formula is globally known. The equipment, there's nothing new about it, nothing scientifically original or, somebody is trying to throw dust in our eyes. I think that we definitely are interested in the Speaker's instruction that this should be dug into, and let's see what comes out of that. At the same time, please go back to the Commission and ask them to determine whether there is any reason why GACL should come under Section 10. At the end of the day, if it's the Transport Ministry that has to answer, we'd like to know who needs to give us that information so that we can establish whether really we have had value for money or whether we have been robbed of some additional resources as part of this process.
You may not be a lawyer, but you're quite conversant with the RTI. For Frontiers being a private entity, what options do we have in terms of getting some clarity on the context of the contract?
Well, I think that the Commission itself is the one who are vested with and clothed with the power to give us final interpretation on these things. And at the end of the day, it will require GACL, if they are signatories to it, to demonstrate that truly any of those clauses under Section 10 actually apply. So their response right now is ambiguous. And I'm sure that, you cannot push them to provide further and better particulars. But the Commission can say, okay, you've quoted Section 10. Section 10 has several elements in it. You need to be specific so that there is a measure of confidence that what you're saying really, can be verified in terms of the projected or expected relationship between GACL and the service provider. So really, our hands are with the Commission at the moment to give us an interpretation. And I know that the way they will do it is to ask GACL to provide further information on what it is they are trying to suggest out of Section 10. They will have to be more specific for the Commission to be reasonably assured that this is potentially the truth, or you need to provide more documentation to support the suggestion that Section 10 can exempt you.
Anyway, I'm grateful for your time. That's Adam Senado. He is co-chair for the Citizens Movement Against Corruption.